Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Renee. Today we're going to be making one of my family's top 5 favorite, most requested meals, white chicken chili. Now, of course, it will never supersede chicken pot pie, but it ranks up there really high. And so one of the things I wanted to share with you is that I've kind of developed this rating system for some of my recipes. And so let me walk you through how I rank this recipe today. So the first one is healthy fuel. Right, so is this healthy? Is it nutrient dense? I would say I'd give this one a 4 out of 5. It's got lots of lean proteins. It's got some cayenne pepper, which helps with inflammation. So I would definitely give this one a high rating. I think where, it depends on how you serve it, that might go down if you load it with sour cream and cheese, which some of us may do later. Yum factor. So I think this is super yummy. I don't think I would share a recipe with you that doesn't have a high yum factor. I would say this is probably a 4. Again, 5 is chicken pot pie. So this is probably a number 4. And, but I think it's absolutely delicious. All right, and so the next ranking is budget friendly. I think this is really budget friendly. I would say this is probably, well, maybe in the middle, because I'll give it 3 out of 5 spoons. So you could make this more budget friendly if you got rid of the chicken and just did all beans. So that would increase it. That might even be a 5 if you went with all beans. All right, prep time. So I'm going to include in this prep time and cook time. So this is probably going to be a 1 or a 2 because we are canning. And so when I can, the process takes me between 3.5, sometimes 4 hours. So, but I will say, so maybe the canning takes longer, but when it's done and all you have to do is open a jar and dump it, on the other side of things, it is a 5. So just today, what we're doing, it's low because it takes some effort, but we're making so much of it, it's gonna save you so much time later. So today, it's a 1. Next time, it's a 5. That sounds pretty good, right? All right, so skill level and complexity. So I would say this is probably, it's pretty complex-ish if you are new to pressure canning. If you've been canning for a while, this is a really simple recipe. And I just want to encourage you, like learning to can, if I can do it, you can do it, pun intended, right? So it can feel complex, but the overall preparation, not much skill. It's like you chop up some things, throw it in a pot, simmer, and you're good. So if you are just doing the slow cooker method or in a pot, this is low skill. Probably even a middle schooler could do this, right? But when it comes to complexity by canning it, it's a little higher, but don't let that intimidate you. So anyway, so that is my ranking for today's. And as we're going along, judge for yourself where you might rank this on the number of spoons you might give it. So the recipe that I'm using today is actually from Carolyn at Homesteading Family, and I've printed her recipe off of her website. I will link that in the description below. And I'm doing it pretty much as is. Her recipe does make 6 quarts. I am aiming for 7 quarts, which is what fits in my 23-quart Presto stovetop canner. So I always try to make sure I've maximized the space in there. So I've adapted a few things. So for example, instead of Great Northern beans, I'm using pinto. I am adding some cans of Rotel, which is tomatoes and chilies. I know if you're a purist, you're like, oh, that's not white chicken chili because you're adding something red. Then leave it out. My family likes the Rotel, so we're adding that in. So I'm substituting the Rotel for her diced green chilies. I'm also adding in, sorry, I gotta move these onions. Woo! Well, spicy. Let's move those over there. And I'm also adding in some cans of corn that I'm not draining, so it adds a nice sweetness to it. So overall, this is a very mild chili. Even most of my family likes the mild version of it. They're mild-mannered, and some of my family are a little bit more spicy, like my husband David. So he'll add some chili pepper flakes or even jalapenos or something at the end. So that way I can make something that's mild, that everyone likes, and then people can doctor it up when it's done. So anyway, all right, so I have my stock pot here. Let me put the recipe right here so I can see it. And I like this stock pot is actually from IKEA, and I've had it forever. But what I like about it is actually has measurements on the side, so that for me, I want at least 7 quarts. So as I'm putting in the ingredients, I can make sure I get it up to 7 quarts. I also would like a little extra because we would like this for dinner tonight. So that's my goal. But this helps me make sure that I'm not falling short of my 7-quart goal. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to add, let's see, a tablespoon of olive oil. I'm gonna eyeball this, make sure the bottom of the pan is covered. So for each of the quart jars, I have cut up about a pound of chicken for each of the quart jars. So I have about 7 pounds of chicken. So when we're actually filling up the jars, we wanna make sure we have half liquid and half solids. So we'll work out that as we are filling those up later. So I have my chicken all cut up. Add chicken and stir to coat in oil for about 10 minutes. And then we're gonna add in the onions, garlic, herbs, and spices, and then cook for an additional 5 minutes. So let's do that. Plunk. While this is cooking, let me just talk a little bit about pressure canning and why I have grown to love pressure canning. So if you're already thinking about, oh my goodness, I can't do this because pressure canning is scary. Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. But what I love about it is that it allows me to really cook things in bulk, and then there are things on my pantry shelf, and it's so convenient to be able to pull things out whenever I want them. That's one part of it, but also with the prices of meat these days, if I see something on sale, which happens rarely, but when it does, I can take advantage of that and then be able to get some canning done to be able to lock in today's prices. So that is another advantage to this. So one of the things you could do too, I'm pressure canning this, but you could follow this recipe and just do this in a stock pot, make it all the way through, or put it in the slow cooker, and then freeze it and maybe Ziploc bags, like probably gallon-sized Ziploc bags, and take them out later. So if you do not have a pressure canner or you're not interested in pressure canning, you could always freeze this too. So it's another option. So I am not fully cooking the chicken. I just want to make sure that it's at least warmed through, that maybe the outside is white, not browned, but just so that everything is hot. So I'm putting hot food into hot jars into the hot canner. And actually my canner is over here and is on low, and I have my jars sitting in there to get them nice and hot as well. So they have filled up with about this much water. So when I'm ready to start filling them with the food, I'll just dump out the water and replace it with the soup. Okay, so the chicken is about done, and I'm gonna start adding in the other ingredients. And I will say that this recipe is really versatile, and you could make this completely vegetarian or vegan. So instead of the chicken, you could add multiple types of white beans. Like I'm doing pinto, you could do navy, Great Northern, cannellini, and chickpea. And so just swap out the chicken for that, and then swap out the chicken broth for vegetable broth. Super easy if you're trying to do like a meatless Monday, or if you are trying to incorporate more plant-based foods to just save on your grocery budget. So it's a great option. And I've made white bean chicken or white bean chili many times, and it's really good. Okay, now we're gonna add in our chopped onions. It's about 2 cups of yellow onion. The recipe calls for 5 cloves of minced garlic. Now I am using the cheater version, so I'm gonna do about 5 tablespoons. We like garlic, so I'm not gonna shy away from this. 3, 4, and 5. I'm gonna mix that up, and then I'll add my other spices in. Let's see, we need a 1/4 cup of cumin, and when I add something, I like to move it over here so I know I did it. Let's let's see, cayenne, a teaspoon. Add more if you like a little bit more heat. I think I'm going to add a little bit extra because I'm doing 7 quarts instead of 6. And then oregano, I'm using Mexican oregano. And it says a tablespoon. I'm going to do that's 1 tablespoon. I'm going to add a little extra. All right, let's mix this up. And now I'm not adding any salt because there's salt in the corn, the canned corn, and in the canned tomatoes. And I'm trying to watch how much sodium we eat. So don't need to add any extra. And I can always add some more when I go to serve this. However, when I go to serve this, I'm probably going to put cheese on it, which also has quite a bit of salt. So it's up to you if you want to add some though. Starting to smell really good. This took for about 5 minutes. So now that that's in here, I'm going to do 5 minutes, and then I'm going to add the corn and the tomatoes, and then I'll add the chicken broth. All right, so these are 10-ounce cans, and this is the Walmart brand of the Rotel. So if you're looking for this is just original diced tomatoes with green chilies. So I'm not draining these. Put that in. And 4. Oh yeah, this is making a lot. Good. So I want to make sure I have enough tomatoes. I do have more cans in my pantry if I wanted to add more tomato, but I think this is a good distribution. Oh, that smells really good. All right, and then I'm going to add my corn again. I've got 3 cans of, what is this? 15.25 ounces. Those probably used to be 16-ounce cans, right? Anyway, I'm not draining them. You could definitely, if you have it, you could also just add frozen corn. Probably, what, 3 cups of frozen corn? Ish. And that would really help you control your amount of sodium too. Now remember, my goal is to make sure I have enough, my liquid to solids ratio is about 50% approximately. So there's quite a bit of liquid in here from the tomatoes and the juice from the natural juices from the chicken. So it's actually pretty liquidy already. And we are at about 6 quarts. 6.5 quarts. I think we will have this for dinner tonight. All right, now I'm ready to add in my chicken broth. Let's see. She says 6 cups of chicken. Oops, hold on. That's not right. 10 cups of chicken broth that is defatted. And 6 cups is 1.5 quarts. So I'm going to start with just 2 quarts. And this is my home canned chicken broth. But feel free to use the cartons. This is actually some of my spicy chicken broth that when I made something else that was kind of spicy. So extra seasonings in that. We add another quart. Good sound. I think there's some wine in there too. Yummy. All right, this is really good. It's nice and liquidy. This is a good ratio. So I don't think I'm gonna add another quart. I think we're good. And that gets us to 8 quarts. Perfect. Which means I have 7 to can and then 1 quart for dinner tonight. And I figure for each quart serves, looks a good, maybe 2 good servings, 2 good bowls. All right, what does Carolyn say? All right, so now that everything is in, we're gonna bring to a boil and then turn down to medium low and allow to simmer for 10 minutes. So this is not boiling yet, so I wanna get this to a boil and then I will reduce to simmer. And once it gets to that simmering for 10 minutes, I will get my jars from my canner and get them ready for filling. While that's doing, I'm gonna do some cleanup in my sink here. Let's cover that, hold in some of that heat. Oh, I almost forgot something important, the beans. My goodness, let's do that. So I have my pinto beans, so I soaked these overnight and I simmered them already for 30 minutes and drained them. And they've just been waiting patiently in the sink. And they're like, hey, lady, don't forget us. So let's add in our beans. Okay, so now we're at 9 quarts. You were probably telling me, don't forget the beans. All right, here we go. I think the solid to liquid ratio is still pretty good. Now you can see it because it's, yeah, we are at 9 quarts. Perfect. It smells really good. You know, and I mentioned if you wanted to do a vegetarian dish, you could add extra different beans, but you could also change up the beans and you could add, you know, a mix of different beans. And even those packages that you see, like the 15 bean bags or whatever, do whatever beans you like. Whatever you have on hand. And if you wanted to make this day of, you can also just use commercially canned or your own home canned beans too. So, all right, let's let that go. Now we're gonna clean up the sink. Everybody in? Okay, good. Okay, so now let's get to filling these. And so I have my canning funnel here and I start with filling all of the jars with the solids first. And I don't drain off all of the broth. So there's still some in there, so that's okay. So fill these all up with the solids and then I will go back and add the broth. And as I said, if I need more broth, I'll just open up another quart. Okay. Now that everybody has about half solids, and there is some liquid in there, I'm just gonna kind of skim off the top and fill them up with broth. And yes, if there are some liquids in there, that is okay. Or excuse me, some solids. And I'm going to fill this up to 1-inch headspace. And I kind of smush it down to get the broth. All right. Need a little bit more. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and debubble these and make sure I have 1-inch headspace, and then I'll wipe the rims with vinegar, with white vinegar, and then put the bands on. But let's go ahead and debubble these and make sure we have the correct headspace. You can use a chopstick for this. I just use this silicone kind of spreading butter knife kind of thing. And I can tell there's a good mix of liquids to solids because it is a soup. We want to make sure that we have the right ratio so that it follows the guidelines. since I'm feeding this to my family, I want to make sure that I'm doing this safely and carefully because they trust me. Okay. Need to add a little extra. Let's look down. So the 1-inch headspace is actually at the bottom of this ring. They look pretty good. Maybe a little bit more on that guy. Okay. All right, I'm going to turn this down and let this simmer since this is going to be our dinner tonight. Move that out of the way. Okay, now that they've all been debubbled, I'm going to go ahead and wipe off the rims with white vinegar. This is really important to make sure you have that clean. You don't want any fat or food particles on there that could prevent the lid from sealing. It also gives you another chance to make sure there aren't any nicks or scratches or any defects on the jar itself. Now I have my new lids. These are from 4 Jars. My favorite canning lids. My success rate is really high with these lids. All right. Oops. My rings, I'm just going to put these on finger tight. Support that they're tight enough that the band or the lid doesn't come off, but we want the air to be able to come out as they vacuum seal. Those are very hot. All right, so we have 7 quarts in here. They're filled up to about their shoulders. We don't want it to be over the top. It could probably be a little bit less, but that is good. The temperature is at about almost a medium. I like to do a slow rise to the temperature because I feel like I have less siphoning that way. I've done my safety checks on my canner. Now I'm gonna put my lid on. I'm gonna line up my little arrows. Here, and then I'm just gonna close it up. And then now we just have to wait. All right, so now that there is a good amount of steam coming out and it's continuous, I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. Once the 10 minutes goes up, then I will put the weight on and the next step begins. All right, so now that we are at 11 pounds of pressure, I'm gonna go ahead and set my timer for 90 minutes. Okay, the house smells amazing because in addition to the canner going, which is still going back there, but I also have it cooking on the stove. So this is our dinner tonight. Really glad we have extra so that I have some for tonight and I'm gonna put the rest in the freezer. But this is hearty and delicious. And of course, I need to add in my sour cream and cheese. But I just wanted to show you how this looked. It is scrumptious, it smells so good. I just want to encourage you, if you are new to canning, please give it a try. If you're scared of it, I get it. This makes a wonderful crock pot dish. Anyway, I do hope that you do try this recipe and do some ratings of your own. How many spoons would you give it? Try it with your family. Would they say it's a 5 out of yum rankings, right? So anyway, I'd love to hear if you did any kind of variations on this, if you did all vegetarian, if you added, maybe you did turkey or some other kind of variation there. I'd love to hear how you made it your own. Anyway, I hope you're all doing really well. And until next time, everyone, take care. Sorry. All right, here we go.
Outtakes.
Outtakes. No. You've got plenty of weirdo outtakes.